All right, buckle up, everybody, because we are diving deep into a biblical love story, but with a twist.
Oh, a twist.
Yeah. We're talking about Ruth and Boaz, and, we're using this YouTube video as our guide, and I think you guys are going to find that there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
Okay, color me intrigued.
So imagine this. Famine strikes, a family is forced to migrate, and tragedy unfolds, leaving Naomi, a widow, with her two daughters-in-law, who are also, tragically, widowed.
Okay, so right away we've got a situation where this isn't just personal grief. Their whole future is kind of on the line.
Right, exactly.
To really get this story, we need to understand the cultural context.
Okay, so break it down for us. What were the societal norms around widows back then?
Well, in ancient Israel, security for a widow was often tied to her husband's family.
Okay.
There was this concept of a kinsman redeemer, basically a male relative who could step in to marry her, protect her inheritance, continue the family line.
So it's like a built-in social safety net, but within the family structure.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when Naomi decides to return to Bethlehem after the famine subsides,
Yeah.
her daughters-in-law have this impossible choice: stay in their homeland or follow her into an unknown future.
And that is where things get really, really interesting. Orpah chooses to return to her people, but Ruth, she makes this shocking declaration.
Yeah.
She tells Naomi, "Where you go, I will go, your people will be my people, and your God my God." Those are some pretty powerful words.
Definitely.
And those words have echoed through centuries. This
Mhm.
wasn't just loyalty to her mother-in-law. It was a complete life upheaval. It's like, imagine leaving everything familiar behind, your family, your culture, even your gods, for an unknown land and an uncertain future.
Exactly.
I mean, there's got to be more to it than we see on the surface, right?
Right.
What do you think was going on in Ruth's mind when she made that decision? I mean, was it purely emotional? Was there something a little more calculated going on?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, it is.
This YouTube video kind of hints that maybe Naomi had a hand in orchestrating a meeting between Ruth and Boaz.
Okay.
Now, Boaz is a wealthy landowner. He's a distant relative of her deceased husband.
Okay.
So maybe Naomi, planted the seed. But ultimately, it was Ruth who had to cultivate it.
So she saw an opportunity and she was bold enough to seize it.
Yeah.
That kind of changes my perspective on her character. She's not just a passive follower. She's a woman making some strategic choices in a world that, frankly, didn't offer women a whole lot of options.
Absolutely. I mean, this definitely sets the stage for the love story, but we can't forget the backdrop of survival and, societal pressures that were shaping their actions.
Right, right. Okay, so Boaz enters the picture. Tell me about this quote-unquote chance encounter in the field. What are we supposed to take away from that first interaction?
So Ruth is gleaning in Boaz's field. This was a custom that allowed the poor to gather leftover grain. Now, Boaz, he notices her, not just as a worker, but as someone deserving of kindness and protection. He even instructs his men to, treat her with respect, make sure she has enough to glean. This wasn't just common courtesy. It was a display of, unusual generosity.
Mm-hmm.
And it really speaks volumes about his character.
He could have easily ignored her,
Oh, for sure.
but he goes above and beyond. Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. He's wealthy, he's powerful, and he's kind. But was he smitten with her from the get-go, or did that come later?
The video doesn't explicitly say, but it definitely lays the groundwork for, a budding attraction. But remember, this is more than just a simple romance. There are layers of cultural expectations, legal complexities, the weight of family legacy, all kind of swirling around here.
That's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. Just when you think you understand the story, another layer reveals itself.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Well, next we delve into the threshing floor scene, where Naomi gives Ruth a pretty audacious plan, and, well, that's where things get really interesting.
Hold on, before we get to that, can we talk about the kinsman redeemer concept a little bit more?
Sure.
You said it was like a safety net, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on the details. I mean, was this a common practice back then? How exactly did it work?
You're right. That's a crucial detail to unpack. So it wasn't just any relative who could be a kinsman redeemer.
Okay.
There was a hierarchy involved.
Okay.
And the closest male relative, he had the first right of refusal, so to speak. And it wasn't just about marriage either,
Yeah.
It involved acquiring the deceased husband's land,
Oh, okay.
ensuring the family's economic stability, preserving their name, their lineage.
So there was a lot at stake, not just for Ruth and Naomi, but for Boaz as well.
Oh, absolutely.
His actions weren't just about his personal feelings, they had legal and social ramifications. This just adds a whole new level of complexity to their interactions. Okay, I'm hooked. Let's get to that threshing floor scene. What was Naomi's plan, and what were the risks involved for Ruth?
All right, so picture the threshing floor, It was this place of activity during the harvest, but at night it became a place of rest.
Okay.
So Naomi instructs Ruth to go to Boaz while he's sleeping and uncover his feet.
Uncover his feet. Okay, that seems a little odd. What was the significance of that in their culture?
It wasn't meant to be like a seductive gesture,
Yeah.
as some I'd assume.
Okay.
In that time and place, it was a symbolic way for a woman to appeal to a man's duty as a kinsman redeemer.
Oh, okay.
Basically saying, hey, I'm here, I'm eligible, and you have a responsibility towards me and my family's legacy.
Oh, so it's like a legal maneuver disguised as a cultural custom.
Exactly.
Pretty clever, but also incredibly risky, right?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, what if Boaz had reacted negatively or completely misinterpreted her actions?
Right. It really shows the trust that Ruth had in both Naomi's wisdom and Boaz's character. But it also highlights the limited options that were available to women at the time. They had to navigate within a system that often left them pretty vulnerable.
Yeah. And how does Boaz react? This is kind of the turning point in the story, right?
Well, Boaz wakes up, startled, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but his response is key. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't exploit the situation. Instead, he acknowledges Ruth's courage and praises her loyalty to Naomi.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we really see his integrity shining through.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this story has resonated for generations. I mean, Boaz is portrayed as like the ideal man.
Right.
Strong, honorable, and compassionate. But I'm guessing things weren't so straightforward from there, right? Didn't you mention something about another kinsman?
You're right. It turns out there was another relative who was actually closer in line to marry Ruth and acquire the land.
Oh.
So this is where the story takes on like a legal drama feel. Boaz, being a man of integrity, decides to follow the proper procedures.
So he goes to court to plead his case.
Well, not exactly court as we think of it today, but there were definitely legal proceedings. The video mentions Boaz meeting the other kinsmen at the city gate.
Okay.
This was like the town square.
Oh, okay.
Legal and social matters were settled there. Imagine a public forum where everyone could witness what was happening.
Okay, so high stakes, public setting, and a rival in the mix. Sounds like a recipe for some serious tension. So how does this play out?
Well, Boaz lays it all out, right,
Okay.
before the elders of the town. He states his intention to buy Naomi's land and to marry Ruth. Initially, the other kinsman seems interested. I mean, it's a good deal, land and a wife.
Right, right.
But then Boaz throws in a crucial detail.
Okay.
Whoever marries Ruth, they must also raise up the name of the dead on the inheritance. In other words, any children they have would legally be considered descendants of Naomi's deceased husband, continuing his lineage.
Oh, wow. That's a game changer. It's not just about personal gain anymore. It's about carrying on the family name and ensuring the deceased husband's legacy lives on.
Exactly. And this is where the other kinsman backs out.
Wow.
It seems he wasn't prepared for that level of commitment or the potential complications it might bring.
Talk about dodging a bullet. So that means Boaz is free to marry Ruth. Happy ending achieved.
Well, not so fast. Even though the other kinsman has relinquished his claim, they still need to make things official. The video describes a custom where a man would take off his sandal and give it to his neighbor to seal a transaction.
Wait, taking off a shoe is like signing on the dotted line?
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's fascinating. But why a sandal?
Symbols held a lot of weight in ancient cultures.
Okay.
In this case, handing over a sandal represented the transfer of ownership and rights.
Yeah.
Made the agreement legally binding in the eyes of the community.
It's amazing how these ancient customs give us a glimpse into their legal system.
Oh.
It's so different from our modern world, and yet there are echoes of those practices in our legal traditions, right?
Right.
We still sign on the dotted line, even though it's usually digital these days.
Absolutely. There's a continuity to these practices. It's fascinating to see how they evolved over time.
Yeah, that's a great point. So to recap, the other kinsman removes his sandal, gives it to Boaz in front of witnesses, and just like that, Boaz becomes the legal owner of the land and the rightful husband of Ruth.
And with that symbolic gesture, a new chapter begins for Boaz and Ruth.
But their story doesn't end there, right? What happens next?
Well, this is where the video takes a surprising turn. It connects their personal story to, like, a much larger narrative. It reveals that Ruth and Boaz have a son named Obed, and guess what? Obed becomes the grandfather of King David.
Wait, seriously, are you telling me that Ruth, this Moabite widow who left everything behind, ended up becoming the great-grandmother of one of the most famous kings in history?
It's mind-blowing, right? It really highlights the ripple effects of our choices, how seemingly ordinary lives can become intertwined with extraordinary events.
This changes everything. It's not just a love story anymore. It's a story about lineage, legacy, and the unexpected turns of fate. It's as if their personal journey becomes a stepping stone in a much grander narrative.
Exactly. And it raises so many questions about how individual choices shape history, how families evolve over time, and how even amidst uncertainty and loss, hope and redemption can emerge.
So we've seen the love story unfold, the legal drama play out, and now this unexpected connection to royalty. I can't wait to see what other insights we uncover in part 3 of our deep dive into the world of Ruth and Boaz. Okay, so we've journeyed with Ruth and Boaz through famine, love, and even a bit of legal drama. And now their son is the grandfather of King David.
It's wild,
I
right?
mean, talk about a plot twist. So what's the bigger picture here?
Well, this video suggests that by following her path, even when it led her away from everything she knew, Ruth basically found her, like, kingdom spouse in a place in history.
It really makes you think about destiny. I mean, did she consciously choose this path, or was she guided by, I don't know, something bigger?
That's a question that's fascinated people for centuries. The video leans towards like a more spiritual interpretation, highlighting the role of faith in Ruth's choices. But even if you're not, spiritually inclined, you can't deny the powerful message of hope and resilience in her story.
Yeah. What strikes me is that she took a massive leap of faith, leaving her homeland, her gods behind. But it wasn't just blind faith, right? She also demonstrated incredible resourcefulness and courage, especially in a society that, let's face it, wasn't always so kind to widows.
Exactly. The video really emphasizes that Ruth wasn't just waiting around for a miracle. She was actively shaping her own destiny, taking risks, making tough choices, and ultimately those actions led her to a place of security and love.
It's a message that, transcends time and culture, whether you believe in divine intervention or simply the power of, making bold choices. Ruth's story encourages us to be open to new possibilities and to trust that, even when we're faced with uncertainty, we have the capacity to create a fulfilling life.
What resonates with me is this idea that sometimes the paths we least expect can lead to the most extraordinary destinations.
Hmm.
I mean, Ruth's journey was anything but predictable,
Hmm.
and yet it ultimately led her to become part of a lineage that would shape the course of history.
Yeah. Speaking of lineage, I keep thinking back to the kinsman redeemer concept. You explained that it was like the social safety net for widows, but it also ensured the continuation of a family's name and inheritance. It makes me wonder how this ancient custom kind of reflects broader societal values.
It's a great point. The kinsman redeemer wasn't just about individual relationships. It was a social mechanism that preserved family units, protected property rights, and ensured social stability. In a way, it reflects the importance they placed on lineage and legacy, themes that are still relevant today, even if, the customs themselves have evolved.
It's amazing how these ancient stories can give us like a window into the past, right? Helping us understand the social structures and cultural beliefs that shaped people's lives. But beyond the historical context, what can we as modern listeners kind of take away from Ruth's story on a personal level?
For me, it's a reminder that we are all part of something bigger than ourselves.
Oh,
Our lives are interconnected in ways we may never fully grasp. And our choices, however small they may seem, can have ripple effects that extend way beyond our immediate circumstances.
that's a powerful thought. It's like that whole 6 degrees of separation idea, but on like a historical scale. We're all connected, not just to each other, but to past generations and to the events that have shaped our world.
Exactly. And Ruth's story reminds us that even amidst hardship and loss, there's always this possibility for renewal and transformation. Her courage, her loyalty, her willingness to embrace the unknown led her to a place of belonging and love. And ultimately, her legacy became intertwined with the history of a nation.
It's a story that inspires us to be bold in our choices, to trust in our ability to overcome adversity, and to believe that even the most unexpected paths can lead us to where we're meant to be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd encourage our listeners to reflect on those moments in their own lives where they took a leap of faith, where they faced the unknown with courage, and where they discovered those unexpected connections that really, enriched their journey.
What a beautiful way to, bring this exploration to a close. It's a reminder that while the details of our lives may differ, those core themes of love, courage, and the search for belonging, They're, universal, timeless.
And who knows, maybe your own story, like Ruth's, holds the potential to inspire generations to come.
That's a great point. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating deep dive into the world of Ruth and Boaz. We hope you've discovered something new, gained a fresh perspective, and maybe even, felt a little inspired to take a leap of faith in your own life.